Tempe, Arizona. Okay, it's not for everyone, all right? There was a time in my life where I loved living in Tempe. I wouldn't live any place else. And now, I live someplace else. So let's get into it. Let's talk about actually the main reasons I often hear people saying they don't want to live in Tempe. We actually did a poll on social media too, and these were the top 5 reasons people are like, not for me. Also, if you don't know me, I'm Courtney Strelzik. I'm a real estate agent here in the East Valley, and I created this channel really to give people insight on realistically what it's like to live here. It's a great place. I love it, but it's not for everyone, or there's, some things you might want to be aware of. So if you're interested and want to follow along, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I will keep you up to date. So reason number one that came up not to move to Tempe was it's a college town. And yes, it's home to ASU. Sun Devils, go Sun Devils. And it's a huge university. There's over between like undergrad and graduate students on campus. There's 40,000 or over 40,000 students. So very, very big university. The thing to remember or just to be aware of if you aren't familiar with Tempe is Tempe or ASU is in downtown Tempe, which is on the very, very north part of town. You're actually like right on the border of Scottsdale and Phoenix. There's Sky Harbor Airport is right next to you too. And Tempe is kind of an interesting shaped city. It's very vertical, if you will. It's kind of like a narrow rectangle. So when you get further south, when you get away from downtown Tempe, it is a very different feel. It is much more suburban for sure. You don't have like a lot of these high-rise buildings and apartment complexes. You still have like restaurants and coffee shops and stuff to do, but it's definitely a lot more residential, a lot more neighborhoods, quieter, not near as much traffic. So definitely a very different vibe. So if you aren't wanting to be around college students or the university, it may be in your best interest to head further south. So the second reason that came up not to move to Tempe kind of coincides, I guess you could say, with it being a college town, but it's the nightlife and the chaos. So in downtown Tempe, there's actually a street called Mill Avenue that's like right next to campus. And this is where a lot of the bars are. And there's like restaurants and coffee shops. And yeah, on a Friday, Saturday night, after like 10 p.m., you're going to have a lot of drunk college students around there. It's definitely, it is what it is. Not really my scene anymore. And I still go to downtown Tempe like earlier hours because there's still like some great coffee shops like Cartels there. There's like a great yoga studio there that does community classes on Sunday actually. And then a couple great restaurants as well. And if you aren't a college student and you still want that like nightlife scene or bar scene, I would definitely recommend going. I mean, Old Town Scottsdale is really close. My personal favorites, I love like Roosevelt Row and Phoenix is great. And really downtown Chandler is not terribly far away too. I mean, maybe Tempe will be your vibe, but I probably doubt it unless you're in that younger age group. But again, that south side, very quiet, very residential. So you aren't going to run into that same issue. This is just really around the downtown area close to campus. But the third reason not to move to Tempe was just the crowding and the density of the city. And again, this really relates more to that north part. It's kind of interesting because there's a lot of high rises there in Tempe. I actually had a friend, she graduated from there. She went to school there like, I don't even want to say like over 15 years ago. And she came back to visit for the first time. And she told me, she was like, Courtney, if you like picked me up and dropped me here and didn't tell me where I was, I would have no idea this was Tempe. It's grown a tremendous amount. It's really unrecognizable to what it was like 10, 15 years ago. But there's a lot going on there too. So you also have a lot more public transportation. You have the light rail that goes directly through downtown too. So if you want to go to like Phoenix, it's easy to get there. And then it also goes out to downtown Mesa as well. That's kind of where the light rail ends. So just depends what you want. It is a more urban area. So if that is your vibe, it could be really, really good. But if not, then head further south, like I mentioned a moment ago. Now, the fourth big reason people said not to move to Tempe was cost of living, particularly related to housing costs. And as a real estate agent, something that is important to note is yes, Tempe historically was a very affordable place to live, or I should say, Phoenix Metro as a whole was considered a pretty affordable city compared to a lot of other places nationally. However, during COVID period and a little bit after, 21, 22, we saw a lot of people move to Arizona, and home prices, like many major areas in the United States, went up significantly, and it's definitely not as affordable as it used to be, mainly because we don't have as many housing options as we did, 15 years ago. All in all, Tempe hasn't seen any bigger increases in home values or significantly bigger increases compared to other parts of Arizona or Phoenix Metro. However, looking at historical trends is certainly more expensive here than it was. But let's talk about, just compare it to, sorry, it's really sunny here, Arizona problems, but let's compare it to other parts of, like Phoenix Metro. Definitely less expensive than Scottsdale. The interesting part about Tempe too is there's a lot more apartment complexes. There's a lot more townhomes. So as far as like lower price homes under 400,000, you actually see a lot more options in Tempe than, some other areas, particularly if you go further east, like to Chandler or Gilbert. But if you have the same exact house in Tempe, like same square footage, same lot size, same finishes, compared to a house in Gilbert, that house in Tempe is going to be more expensive. You're just a little bit more central in Phoenix Metro. And when you're a little bit more central, that is often the case. It just gets a little bit more expensive price per square foot. So it just kind of depends what you're looking at. And also, if you are trying to get into one of the lower priced homes, like a condo or townhome, one thing I would caution you on is that, definitely check the HOAs, because you might see a place that looks really affordable and on paper it looks really good. And then you see the HOA is 300. I've seen a couple that are $400 a month, and that is really going to impact your monthly payment. So just a couple considerations. It may make more sense to look for a single family home and go a little bit further, like, towards Gilbert. Your monthly payment, even if the house is a little bit more expensive, may be lower than that condo in Tempe, just because of that HOA. And then also, depending on the loan type you get, the interest rate can be a little bit higher for a townhome or a condo as well. So the fifth reason people are saying not to move to Tempe was the crime and just overall safety. And I'm going to actually show you a crime map here. This is for Neighborhood Scout, and it just grades things. It's on like emergency calls or crimes reported per capita of residents. And that north part where you see red, which is a higher crime rate. Okay, so keep in mind that is closer to the university, where there's more, urban living, more condensed living. And then the further south you go, into those areas I was referring that are more residential or suburban like, those are lower crime rates per capita. And this applies to not just Phoenix, but really across the United States. It's a really common trend to see areas that are more densely populated. Usually it correlates with a higher crime rate. So yes, something to take into account. Now, if you are purchasing a home, I always recommend looking at another resource too, Community Crime Map. You can actually go on here and pick an area and just kind of see what actual crimes were being reported, and it'll break that down for you. So that's something, regardless if you're looking at Tempe or another town, I always recommend people check that out. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of the video that, I used to live in Tempe, loved it. And now I'm like, I don't live there anymore. And I would say, like, where I'm at this stage of life, I would definitely reconsider moving to South Tempe. And I have worked with clients, and I know a lot of people that live in that area, closer to downtown, and they absolutely love it. It just depends really what you want. If you want more of an urban area, or if you want more of a suburban feel, like what stage of life you're in. So, the best way to really understand if a city is right for you is actually to get your boots on the ground and explore it. But if you want to learn more about Tempe, I do have this playlist right here that just highlights a lot of different things. So go ahead and check that out. Thank you so much for your time, and have a fantastic day.